In this lesson, we're going to learn some basic techniques for creating seamless textures. Alright, so in your project files, you should find this wood_7.jpg file. And to start out, the first thing that we need to do is we need to inspect our image and make sure that we could even use it as a tileable or seamless texture. A couple of things to watch out for are going to be the lighting, as we discussed in the last lesson. And then also, you want to check for variations in slope, like lines like this. So we have these wood planks here, and you can see that we have these horizontal lines in between the planks. And these could pose some issues whenever we're trying to tile this texture. Another thing that we'll see here is that across the top, we've got a different color of wood versus this color down here. And so that may not go together all that well. So to get started with this, first thing that we want to do is we want to change the size of this texture. So let's go to Image, Image Size, and what we want to do is we want to take the highest number here and we want to drop it down to the nearest power of 2. So right now I have this width and it's set to 2592. I'm going to go ahead and drop it down to 2048. Okay? Now the issue that we're going to have with this is that we have this height that is at 1536, and that's not going to work. We want a square texture. So what we need to do is let's just simply hit cancel. Let's go to Image, Image Size, and let's take the lowest number and let's bring it to the nearest power of 2. Now the nearest one is 2048 on our height here, and we can bump that up. Now normally I don't like to enlarge textures at all, but since it's so close I think it will work. So we're going to use the bicubic smoother to take this up, and we're just going to type in 2048. Now that's also going to take our width up to 2731, and that's fine. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take out part of the width on this to make this square. So let's hit OK on this. That will enlarge that some, and it's really not going to affect the overall resolution. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to take a guide and I want to bring this all the way over here to about 2048. Now let's hold down Alt and zoom in on this guide here, and let's make sure that we are exactly on 2048. And I was really close. I was 1 pixel off. That very rarely ever happens. So we are now at 2048. Now if your rulers don't show up as pixels, you can always right click on them and choose what you want. So right now we're at pixels. By default you may be at inches or something like that. Okay, let's go ahead and come on back. And let's just drop back here, and now we know that this area is going to be 2048 by 2048. So that's key. You want to make sure that each side is exactly the same. Alright, so now what do we do? Well, next thing that we need to do is we need to check to make sure that our lines are straight and that they're going to match up from this side over to this side. So what I like to do is I like to drag out a couple of guides along points like that and just check to make sure that those are set. And that one looks pretty good. We might be a little off. Let's go down to this one, and we're pretty close. We can see that it's getting just very gradually away from that guideline, but I don't think it's really going to be that much of an issue. This one we might need to do a little bit of adjustment here. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking from this point to this point here. I'm not looking beyond this point here. Okay, so that's important. Let's drag out one more guide down to this one, and we can see that this one is off quite a bit here. So let's drag that right in the middle, and we're going to use just some basic techniques to just kind of skew the image. So to do this, let's hit Control T, and you can hold down Control and Shift, and you can grab these corners and you can tweak the image. So I'm just going to grab right here and tweak that a little bit to where this is pretty much the same. Let's go ahead and bring it down just a little bit more, and you just want to be careful with it. You don't want to go too much. Looking good there. This looks pretty even across the top there. This is looking good. So now what we'll do is we'll hit Enter, and then we need to get rid of any excess here. So we're going to crop that out. So outside of my canvas, I'm going to just simply click and drag, There we go. So now let's hit enter, and that's going to get rid of any information that is outside our canvas. Let's hit Control D to deselect, and now what we want to do is we want to get rid of this excess here. So I'm going to grab my marquee selection tool, and we're going to use the rectangle. And we're going to click and drag our selection out here, and it should snap to our guideline that we have already created. Now if you don't have snapping on, go to View and then turn on Snap, and there you go. So now what we can do is we can right click and we can layer via cut, and that's going to split that into 2 layers. And I'm going to take this excess and I'm going to drop it right over here on this side. Now what this is going to do is it's going to make absolutely certain that this side over here matches up with this side here. So whenever we tile that, we will have 0 seam on the ends. Now one thing that it did do is it created a seam right here in the middle. And so what we need to do is we need to come in and we need to soften that seam. So a way to do that is to grab your eraser tool, and this is just one way, and you can take the opacity down real low, and this is a very basic form. Okay, and we'll go ahead and we'll take our brush size up, and then we'll just simply sit here and we will erase that seam. Now I'm going to take that opacity down a little bit more just to soften up that edge. We want 0 seams. And I'm just going to take that down even more, just to gradually get rid of that. Okay, and we'll just sit here and we will erase, and you might use a brush that's a little bit softer as well. You could use something like this, and that will give you a little bit better result. Let's go ahead and bump up that opacity a little bit more to about 25 or so. Okay, and that'll give you some softer edges there. We want to get rid of any edges that might be ghosting, so like things like little nails and that sort of thing, they might ghost a little bit. And we'll just sit here and we'll soften these up a little bit more. And then I like to take this down really, really low and just bump these edges here that are really soft, and just really blend that in. Okay, now as the artist, we know where that seam is going to be, but a good check to do is whenever you're creating a seamless texture, you may ask someone that you trust, a fellow student or employee or something like that, ask them, you know, can you see the seam here? And if they can tell where the seam is, you may want to kind of think about retouching that up. Now this is just a basic technique. As we go throughout this course, we're going to learn more techniques to really push this workflow. Now one other thing that we need to do is we need to go ahead and convert this or merge this down to one layer, and then we need to get rid of any excess here. So I'm going to grab up to this point. We're just going to hit enter, and that's going to give us our texture. One thing that we want to check on our image size is going to be whether or not that is correct. So it looks like we lost 1 pixel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my constrained portions and turn that off. Let's take this to 2048, and we're going to enlarge that. So we're just going to make sure that we use that bicubic smoother and hit OK. And that's just going to pop it up to that even size there. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to check to make sure that this is actually seamless. So a way to do this is to go to Filter, Other, and Offset. Now what you'll want to do is you'll want to input the values in your horizontal and vertical. You want to input exactly half your image size. So as you can see here, this is 1024 by 1024. Okay, so we had 2048 by 2048. So now we can see here, we can inspect this, and we can see a couple of issues here. First off, we see this thin line right here, and that can be fixed very, very easily. But the other thing that we see here is that we have this line right here, and that's not going to work out so well. So we'll have to fix that. So let's go ahead and click Cancel just for right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that little bit right up there. So this can be done pretty easily just by hitting Control T and grabbing right here at the top and just getting rid of that out of the image. Now I'm going to push this a little bit above because I know that these colors match pretty closely, and I think I can blend that in pretty well. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's come in here and let's just simply hit enter on that, and we're going to go ahead and crop out that extra information on the outside of the canvas. Let's hit enter, and then let's go ahead and use filter, other, and offset. We should have those values stored there. Okay, so everything is looking good here. This goes together pretty well. We'll have to come in and maybe do a little bit of work on this. A couple of ways to do that. You can come in and you can grab your clone stamp tool if you like. Let's hit OK on this just to finalize that. We can go to clone stamp, and what you can do is you can hold down Alt. Let's go ahead and grab a soft brush for this. And you can clone an area just by holding down Alt, and then you can sample that across there. Okay, and you could do something like that and just kind of break up that seam a little bit so that way it's not so obvious, and make it look a little faded. Okay, so that it's a good grain to go with. Everything looks pretty good. One thing that you want to be careful though is you don't want to go all the way out to the edge there. Okay, you want those to match up properly. Now it looks like here we've grabbed a little part of that nail, so let's go ahead and clone that, and let's grab something down here, and let's just continue to clone over that until it's disappeared. Got a little bit of ghosting right there, so let's take care of that. That's out of the way. So we've taken care of that seam, got that nice little section right there. Now one thing that I did see was this little tiny pixel right in here. So what I like to do is I like to take my brush size down pretty low. We'll go down to something like 18 or 20 or so, and we're going to come right up in here just above this right here. We're going to hit Alt and clone right above that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that down, hold Shift, and just drag all the way down to the bottom, and we've gotten rid of that line. Now little lines like that, that's a very easy technique to take care of. Now if it gets a little bit bigger than that, you may want to check your offset. You may have something, some extra information. Okay, so now we've gone through some of the core basic techniques for creating seamless textures here. So to get back to your original texture, go to Other, Offset, and 1024 by 1024. Alright, so in our next lesson, we're going to learn the process of cleaning up textures and getting rid of any artifacts or any different details that we didn't see whenever we were taking photographs. Alright, so I'll see you then.